Welcome back to Kentucky Sports Television. We're now joined by Larry Vaught from VaughtsViews.com. Larry, thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Appreciate it, TJ.
It is a little bit, we talked before we started, about doom and gloom right now with the UK basketball team coming off that loss to Tennessee. It was our first look at this team without Nerlens Noel. Is this as bad, or is this team as bad as we saw in Knoxville, you think?
Well, I hope not. We're not going to have much fun the next few weeks. But I've got a feeling it's not a whole lot better. And if you go back and look at how the team played, even with Nerlens, there were a lot of games where you kind of wondered, well, how good is this team even with him? Well, you take your best shot blocker, the nation's best shot blocker, you take your best rebounder, you take really the only guy that's scored consistently inside, you take the only guy that's played, I think, with energy every minute he's been on the floor, and to me, you take the heart out of this team. The fact that they got walloped at Tennessee, I don't think it was a shock, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope Calipari has been able to put some pieces together and figure some things out, but I just don't see a team that's kind of lacked mental toughness and lack some cohesiveness and lack some coachability for 5 months. I don't see that changing in 3 days just because you lost a game in Tennessee.
Did you think when Cal said the team wasn't coachable, did you think that was a fair criticism based on what we've seen so far?
I think it probably was. I don't think he probably meant it quite as harsh as what it sounded coming after a 30-point loss. But I think he's just got some guys that either won't do or maybe can't do what he wants them to, and he's just frustrated with that at this point. And I don't know how you change. I mean, it's not like you can go get in and bring in new players. You are what you are, and you hate to be overly critical of anybody, but I still think a lot of their problems just goes back to the point guard. And this is even before Nerlens was hurt. I think, just imagine, TJ, I think if you put Marcus Teague on this team, I think this team is so much better in so many ways. You got a guy that can guard on the perimeter. You got a guy that can break people down, go to the basket and finish, or dish it off to other people. I think players like Archie Goodwin and Alex Porthos would have been so much better if they'd have had somebody like that. But they don't. That's been the reality of it. Calipari has tried different things. Looking back, I mean, I never thought I would say this, but looking back, maybe if they'd have left Archie Goodwin at point guard after they did it there for those couple of weeks, just kept trying to develop him there, maybe that would have been the best thing for this team. I sure can't see how it could have hurt anymore, and maybe looking back, maybe that would have been better off.
If you had to pinpoint, I know you talked about Ryan Harrow and the Archie Goodwin. If there's one thing, Cal says his team doesn't have any fight, and without Nerlens, it looks like there are a lot of things wrong. If there's one major thing they need to fix heading into this game against Vanderbilt tomorrow, what is it to you?
Effort. I think it's just effort. I mean, you can't make a guy make shots, or you can't make a guy jump higher, but you can sure have him play harder. And I just didn't think the Kentucky guys played all that hard, or maybe they played scared or just passive. I don't know what it was, but at Tennessee, when you looked up in Tennessee, he had 13 shots in 5 minutes and had 4 offensive rebounds in 2 minutes. You just knew they were in for a real long day, even though the start wasn't all that bad. But they just have got to play with more enthusiasm and more effort. I think Julius Mays does that. I think Jared Poston does that. I think both of them have some limitations, but I don't think effort's one thing you can question. I even think that Kyle Wiltshire probably plays harder than what a lot of people want to give him credit for. I just think there are certain limitations he has in what he can and can't do. But there's some other guys on that team with a whole lot more athletic ability that I think need to be playing with a lot more effort to go with that ability.
In the press conference before the Tennessee game, the players and Coach Cal kind of talked about guys stepping up in Nerlens' absence. Willie Cauley-Stein did not get it done. Alex Porthos didn't get it done. Archie Goodwin was the guy they said in practice had become more assertive, and he didn't turn that into good play on Saturday. Who's a player that really, in your eyes, has what it takes or has shown enough flash that he needs to step up with Nerlens out and say, this is my team, guys, follow me, and I'll carry you to the tournament?
Can I answer none of the above?
It looks that way.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, you would like to think Archie Goodwin or Alex Porthos or Willie Cauley, you would like to think one of those guys could do it. But after what you saw Saturday, you just wonder. And really what you've seen most of the season, you've seen some flashes of brilliance from some of those different guys. But consistently, you just haven't seen it. And I just don't think a guy like Jared Poston, bless his heart, as hard as he plays, he's not a guy that can take you to the promised land of Division I basketball. I think Kyle Wiltshire has some things that he tries to do, but he just can't do enough. And I just think right now it's a team that's got some good players, doesn't have great players. I think it's a team that's not overly tough physically, and I think it's a team that's really lacking confidence, and that's just a bad combination. They struggled to beat Vanderbilt on the road. I think they're going to have a real struggle to beat Vanderbilt at home. I think the Missouri game sets up horribly for Kentucky when you look at the matchups there. I think Mississippi State's the one game, if I had to say, will they win a game? That would be one I would say they would. But then that finish on the road at Georgia, at Arkansas, and Florida at home, that just looks brutal to me. So maybe I'll come out Thursday morning and be writing that column. I was wrong. This team put it back together. But as we sit here and talk right now, TJ, I just don't see a whole lot of room or reason to be overly optimistic.
So it sounds like, before we let you go, when it's all said and done, you don't think this team will be in the tournament at the end of the season?
Well, if you remember, I'm a guy that back in mid-January didn't think they would make the tournament. That's when they had Nerlens.
Right.
So I'm not going to probably change it. I think this team had a lot of issues even with Nerlens. When I looked down the schedule, how they were going to have to finish the year, I just thought they were probably going to be in trouble. They were probably going to be a team that had a chance to kind of play themselves back into the NCAA. They were going to have to put themselves really solidly in there because it's end of the season. It's really a pretty tough grind for Kentucky. And now without Nerlens, I just don't see how they can do it. I know John is saying we're not giving up. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But again, he's only got so many options, and we'll see. Maybe if they win these two this weekend, they'll get really charged, and probably the schedule is falling good for Kentucky. They probably needed 3 games in a row at home to help them, because if there's ever a time that maybe the fans could will Kentucky to a victory, maybe it'll be these next 3 games.
All right, Larry Vaught from VaughtsViews.com. Thanks for joining us. Always enjoy talking with you, Larry.
Same here, TJ.